Well, my name is Reneisha Rudder, and right now I am the Economic Resiliency Coordinator for the Southeastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. It's in Versailles. We call it CIRPC for short. And but I actually started as a Digital Inclusion Fellow with the Purdue Center of Regional Development and Serve Indiana. I think that being a Broadband Ready Community means that your leaders, your community, your residents have come together and identified disparity gaps in broadband connectivity. You know, or at least have a general idea of who has terrible internet, who has so-so or pretty good internet, or maybe who has absolutely nothing. And you've taken the steps to come together and not only identify again those gaps, but also make a plan like, we want to have this area served by X date. And so you're looking at all kinds of creative solutions. You're working with the internet service providers in your community, maybe looking to opening up to inviting new ones in, and you're just essentially ready to make some changes to the existing structure of broadband that is not working for your community and you want to make improvements. So Broadband Ready Community is somebody that is attacking that very aggressively. What I can say from what I've experienced and witnessed with the communities who have gone through that process is that, well, I think that the state's done a great job of making that whole program and the way to enter into that program low-hanging fruit. They've made it pretty easy. You get a task force together, which actually in my experience has been the hardest part. But once you have your task force or your group of people that will work on the broadband and digital inclusion issues for your community, then the state has an ordinance that has 10 easy tenets that you agree to, your community agrees to, and you fill out an application, very easy, and submit it, and they're pretty quick in answering. So it's a very easy process. I also think in terms of after the certification, like Switzerland, like Greensburg and Jefferson, what I see them doing is, again, just those creative solutions for how they're going to work out better deals with the providers to get people to get fiber lines extended, or just working together to make the public aware of programs like the Indiana Connectivity Program. There's another line extension program, and the Affordable Connectivity Program, like Charter, for instance. I remember I was meeting with them with one of the task forces, and they had literature that they're like, yes, please tell your residents, the ones that if affordability is an issue for them, we want to help them, because we realized how much people struggled again over the pandemic, and why it's important to really start helping our communities, bringing people together to tackle these issues. Having open discussions with the providers in the area, or again, any considering new ones who may want to come in, has been really important, because they all have their different strengths as to what they're able to provide and when they'd be able to provide it. We have, again, in Indiana being kind of a conglomerate of rural areas with some cities and towns in between, that you have a lot of reliance upon the providers that say work with like the REMCs. So it's important to not forget them, because sometimes that's all that an area has. Whereas some areas may have the big name providers, and that's great too, that's excellent. Being open to those talks, but also keeping in mind still that at the end you want to get people served. So keep the conversation going about how do we meet in the middle to make sure as much people get served as possible and as much infrastructure gets put in and improved as possible. Healthcare, where you had in the thick of the pandemic, where most hospitals could really only have the capacity to take in the worst cases of COVID-19, or you had with education, again, the schools were closed down and students that couldn't get internet at home, business owners who, unless they were essential business, maybe had to shut down for a bit, or their customers just stopped coming because as we were figuring out what the heck was going on, the pandemic was, and they suffered. And so whereas the people who could access an appointment virtually with their doctor, fared better. The people who did have internet that, even if it was slow, their kids could at least do something instead of just trying to figure out, from nothing, fared a little bit better. The business owners that had the capacity for e-commerce online fared better throughout the pandemic than those who did not. So all three of those sectors, we saw significant impacts. And again, with some of the improvements that have been made since, we're seeing how it's literally life-changing for a lot of the people involved in the communities. So our next steps, a lot of them again are just outreach, getting the people aware, because there still is a lot of work to do, to be done in getting people aware of all the programs and the resources that are out there that could benefit them, but also education. For instance, digital inclusion, that is one phrase that when I first started, people were like, what is that? And that's something that I'm still, going out and telling people and explaining what that is and why it's important, why it pairs with broadband, that you try to, if connectivity is your issue, you try to tackle that first, and then you look into digital inclusion. Once we have the connectivity, then we look into how and the what and the why of different devices or ways to connect, or how to access it if it's free, how to afford it if it's not. You need people that are better educated on, again, how to use computers, how to, what's the difference between Wi-Fi and cellular data, or cybersecurity, all those things that come with that. The one thing I would say is that I really encourage any communities that maybe are hesitant about why it's important to participate in the Broadband Ready Communities program, is that it's only going to benefit you to have that relationship with the state. The state's literally reaching out and being like, hey, come work with us. We have some tenets set that you have to approve of first, but we promise there's good things coming if you work with us on this program, if you engage with us. So that's what I think that's what I would like to leave the communities with, is I really encourage you to consider, if you're kind of hesitant or thinking, nah, it's not really important. Like, it will be. It's never a bad thing to have some kind of, facet that makes engagement with the state government better.